The role of trade unions in America. I love America. With all of its warts and faults, this is my place. I have loved it from the moment I landed at John F. Kennedy International Airport in March of 1970. Something about this place touched my soul. I am a Vietnam-era veteran. I joined as soon as I turned 18. The war was essentially over by then. I enjoyed my short stint in the United States Air Force. It was a great learning experience for me. My love for America requires me to fight for the changes necessary to ensure the future is full of opportunities for current and future generations. I believe that America's best days lay ahead. We must, however, make the structural changes necessary to move forward. America needs another revolution, not one of destruction, but one that radically changes the social and economic structure of the nation. We have to begin by putting people before profit. We must confront our complex history with the truth. With critical thinking and the ballot, we can transform our nation into a people-centric, worker-focused society. With our unions in the vanguard, we are capable of leading a movement for radical change in the interest of the working class. Dr. Huey P. Newton stated, and I quote, "The task is to transform society. Only the people can do that, not heroes, not celebrities, not stars." It is my observation that we currently live in a fascist state. For those that disagree with my assessment, I'm willing to say that we are most certainly living in a mature, pre-fascist nation. The Lost Cause posse are at it again. We are in fact currently engaged in the Second Civil War. The Confederates, who have taken over the Republican Party, have decided that the oppression of the working class and white nationalism is what they want to return to. These Confederates are seeking to revert to a time when women and Africans in America could not vote, and a time when freedom was not guaranteed to all. They have chosen to disregard the laws and Constitution of the United States of America again. The states of Alabama and Texas ignoring the Supreme Court's decisions is indefensible. We cannot allow any entity to willfully ignore the authority of the court. We must note for the record that the Supreme Court's majority is considered to be ultra-conservative. Whether we agree or not, we must abide by the rulings of the court or slide into nihilism. The Confederate States lack respect for any rule or law that they do not agree with. This is a recipe for the ultimate disaster for any nation. The United States cannot afford the continued treasonous actions of the Lost Cause posse. They must be prosecuted under the law and, where applicable, voted out by those who prefer one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. These treasonous anti-worker, anti-democratic actions are being funded by an elitist, billionaire corporate class. This elitist, billionaire corporate class is hell-bent on the destruction of the working class, whose standard of living has been created by and is protected by the labor movement. This drive to destroy the standard of living of the working class is to create increased profits for the elitist class. As American capitalist power is diminished globally, wealth cannot be shared equitably at home. We live in a country where the lines between corporations and government are no longer discernible. History warns us that this convergence between business and government is a clear warning sign of the march to fascism. We have witnessed this in Germany, Italy, Argentina, and Chile. In the former Confederate states, we are electing officials who have no respect for the Constitution or the laws of the land. This is the continued march towards fascism and is not sustainable. Democracy requires debate and compromise. We must decide if we want an egalitarian society where all are equal before the law, and more importantly, equal before each other. A divided nation will not be able to maintain global dominance. A nation marred in a civil war, violent or not, will lose global dominance and will be unable to regain any such dominance in the near future. Lack of global dominance will have catastrophic effects here at home. Everything that you understand to be true today will end or be significantly reduced. There will be no Medicare, no Social Security, no pensions, no unions. We know this because the Confederates are actually campaigning to get rid of these programs in anticipation of the full implementation of fascism. Franklin D. Roosevelt noted, and I quote, "We must especially beware of that small group of selfish men
who would clip the wings of the American eagle in order to feather their own nests."
Shared resources and responsibilities will help us to grow as a healthy society, free from the scourge of racism, sexism, and other forms of exploitation. What is wrong with diversity, inclusion, or equity? Are we not better because of the contributions of Crispus Attucks, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Susan B. Anthony, the Buffalo Soldiers, the Tuskegee Airmen, and Jackie Robinson, to name a few? The working class keeps coming up on the short end of the stick because corporate lobbyists are writing the laws for the elected officials. The wealth inequality must be addressed. This calls for 1. Significant increases in all wages, including the federal minimum wage. 2. Significantly increasing Social Security benefits for all workers. 3. Cancel all student loan debts for those that went to public institutions of higher learning. 4. Significantly increase the availability of affordable housing. When do we start to act in our own self-interest and not in the interest of the elitist class? The Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, which gave corporations the same free speech rights as we the people, has caused a flood of billions of dollars into the political space. Much of this money is considered dark money. What are the sources of these monies that attempt to influence the thought process of the citizenry, particularly the working class? This excessive amount of money must be removed from our politics if we intend to have a nation that serves the interest of the working class. Corporations and the billionaire class are able to spend excessive amounts of money in each election cycle. This gives them an unfair advantage over free speech. One such glaring example is the ability to create and promote false advertising with the intention of misleading the working class. The corporate billionaire class owns all the major media outlets. In 1949, Albert Einstein said, and I quote, "There will come a time when the rich own all the media, and it will be impossible for the public to make an informed decision. These words are so true today. Over the past 30 years, ownership of our major media outlets have been consolidated from 50 corporations to 6. 6 corporations own all of the major media outlets in the United States of America: radio, television, streaming, movies, and social media, all controlled by 6 corporations. Let that sink in. The end of the Fairness Doctrine in 1987 has led to the extreme partisan positions in our media today. This Federal Communications Commission rule required broadcast licensees to cover issues of public importance in a fair manner. That is, you got to hear the debate from various points of view. This allowed our citizenry to hear and weigh the varying points of view regardless of their media choice. The President of the United States at the time was Ronald Reagan. By changing the law, President Bill Clinton allowed foreign ownership of media outlets like television, radio, and newspaper. This opened the door for Rupert Murdoch to buy Fox Corporation, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post, to name a few. 37 years ago, there were 50 companies that owned most major media outlets. Today, 90% of the media outlets is owned by 6 corporations. That concentration of control of news and information is a direct threat to democracy. Organized labor needs to invest in creating space on satellite radio and cable television to provide current news and information from the perspective of the working class. We must become the functioning vanguard voice for working families. I do not believe that the resolution to the issues confronting working people lay in the hands of the Republican or the Democratic parties. They are both owned and controlled by factions of the billionaire corporate class. The resolution must be in the hands of the people. The compromises made between these factions of the ruling elite will always occur at the expense of working families. The ruling class will always agree that control of society rests in their hands. It is my position that real change comes when labor builds its own political party and starts to champion the cause of working families. We must begin to withdraw some of our resources from the current political spectrum and invest in our own political structure, a workers' party. 2024 ushers in a major election year with the presidency, control of the Senate, and the House of Representatives up for grabs. This election will be resolved at the ballot box in November. What direction will the rank and file take? While all of societal divisions exist in our labor movement, we must consistently work to build bridges of unity, of purpose. Labor must not allow racism, sexism, and other forms of isms and schisms to go unchallenged. In order to achieve positive outcomes for the working class, our union leadership must provide clear reasons why a particular path should be followed. Union leadership cannot and must not give out mixed messages. We must be clear and concise. We must be definitive. Those forces within the ranks of labor that vote against the interests of the working class cannot be acquiesced to. They must understand that the union, the vanguard of the working class, has interests vastly different than the billionaire class and corporate America. Elections can be likened to horse races. The two major political parties are the thoroughbreds, and the third parties are the mules in the race. At the track, betting on the thoroughbreds will always bring more winning than betting on the mules. Can a mule win? Yes. But it would require that both thoroughbreds break their legs in the race. Until we own our own thoroughbred, we have no choice but to place a bet on the horses of the elite. In a period of time when we as a nation are confronted with anti-democratic, autocratic, regressive, and vindictive forces, we must become vigilant. We must focus our energies on an outcome that is more conducive to our collective progress. We are once again fighting another civil war. The Lost Cause Posse are once again trying to return to a time when women could not vote, when Africans who were born in America could not vote, when some human beings were forced to work for free, when union organizers were tarred and feathered, some lynched, and when organizing a union was illegal. What happens when you unleash over 30 million low-wage workers into the labor pool? 30 million people having all the same skill sets. Why would an employer want to pay you more? Simply because you're white? White workers will suffer irreparable setbacks to their wages and standard of living if the Confederates gain control of the political apparatus. How long after this re-enslavement do you think that you would keep your house, your pension, Social Security, your health care, paid sick days, and vacation? We must be reminded that the vast majority of men that died for the Confederacy owned neither slaves or land. They were fighting to uphold a system that was as much anti-poor white as it was anti-African. We see all too well today that too many working class whites are invested in a position that is anti-worker, whether white or black. Too many white workers are once again willing to accept crumbs in the name of white nationalism, as opposed to gaining a fair share of the pie in the name of working class solidarity. Union leadership must stand firmly against the scourge of divisionism. Victory for the Confederates means defeat for the working class. Whiteness has never been uplifting for the vast majority of the working class, white or black. While it produces an emotional high, it never raised white workers out of poverty, nor stopped them from living from paycheck to paycheck. Deregulation of the airline and trucking industries, unsafe practices in the coal mines, on the railroads, and on the waterfront, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and the permanent normal trade relations with China have all negatively impacted the working class and their standard of living. This can only be corrected with the collective effort of all of the labor unions. I do not care what union you're a member of, whether building trades, service, or industrial, none will survive unless all survive. In the words made famous by the industrial workers of the world known as the Wobblies, an injury to one is an injury to all. It is only when workers realize that they are being exploited and oppressed by unrestrained capitalism that real change will begin to take place. Time and resources cannot be put into protest votes and long shot chances. So while we're sailing on these two ships, Democratic and Republican ships, we must simultaneously begin to build our own ship, a workers' ship that is owned lock, stock, and barrel by organized labor and its allies. We must cultivate an environment to build our working class ship. In this upcoming election, we need to win a supermajority in the Senate while building a majority in the House of Representatives. Needless to say, we cannot allow the leader of the anti-democratic, insurrectionist, Confederate movement to become president. In fact, we cannot allow any of the Confederate Party to win anything. The working class needs truth tellers, people willing to take a stand, not for the party, but for the advancement of the nation as a whole, not for individualism, but for the collective betterment of our society. Our labor unions must focus resources, not only on swing states, but on so-called deep red states where we can build a movement among all eligible, non-voting working class citizens. Mobilizing voter registration and voter turnout is a necessity. We, the labor movement, must be the catalyst to make sustainable changes in our society. Over the past 55 plus years, the working class has grown tired of being the also-ran. We must make specific, concrete demands that are deliverable in the first 100 days of the newly elected government. We have not seen any major Confederate candidate that was not anti-union, and as such, anti-working class. They are anti-constitution, anti-democracy, fascist, book banning, and insurrectionists. Not one member of the Confederate Party stood with any striking union workers against the corporate elite. While President Joe Biden walked the picket line with striking auto workers, the leader of the Confederates spoke at a non-union factory. Take the time to listen to both speeches with your own ears and decide which speech was pro-worker. This is a first in the history of our nation. Never before has a sitting president or past president stood with striking workers on a physical picket line. While this can be considered symbolic, it was symbolism in the favor of working families. With the passage of the American Rescue Plan in 2021, workers made significant gains. Some of the highlights of this legislation are: 1. $1,400 was given to most working people. 2. Unemployment insurance was extended. 3. Child tax credit increased. 4. Earned income tax credit increased. 5. Child and dependent care tax credit increased. 6. Provided support to small businesses. 7. Lowered health care premiums and 100% federal subsidy provided for COBRA. 8. Provided a total of $65.1 billion in direct, flexible spending to each county in the United States. 9. Provided a total of $219.8 billion to all the states to help with their recovery from the shutdown caused by COVID-19. 10. $40.16 billion for the transportation sector, including $16 billion for New York State's Metropolitan Transportation Authority. This money provided wage increases for workers, kept the systems up and running and in a state of good repair. 11. provided through the Butch-Lewis Act billions of dollars for the protection of over 200 multi-employer pension plans that were distressed. The American Rescue Plan protected the full pension benefits of over 3 million workers across America, and specifically protecting the benefits of close to 500,000 Teamsters, both active and retired, who faced up to 60% cuts to their pension benefits. We must note for the record that no Confederate, formerly Republican, in the Senate or in the House of Representatives voted to protect the security of hard-working union members' retirement benefits. We cannot ignore what this means to 3 million union workers and retirees. 1 year after the passage of the American Rescue Plan, the Treasury Department reported that the country was experiencing one of the strongest periods of economic growth. It is believed by many economists that without the passage of this bill, America would have experienced a double-digit recession. In 2022, we saw the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This is the largest investment in the country's infrastructure since President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who served from 1953 to 1961, who also created the interstate highway system over 60 years ago. This act will create nationwide broadband, build water and sewer projects, investments to improve road, rail, and airports. It is expected to create 2 million jobs over the next 10 years. We need a government that will pass 10 more such national investment packages so that America can be on par with our global economic rivals. These national investments will create millions of union and good-paying jobs for the American working class. The powerful nations in modern history were the industrial powerhouses. We must reindustrialize America. Good jobs and good pay creates financial security and lessens the stresses that cause social divisions and tensions. Workers must be careful not to be pulled into extreme nationalism. Fascists will speak about being anti-big business, anti-capitalist, and anti-bourgeois. The bourgeois is the upper class that generally supports an anti-worker agenda. The American working class must reject an economy based on war. No society ever survives continuous warfare. From 1776, America has been at war for 230 years, experiencing only 17 years of peace. America has been at war for over 90% of its existence. This is not sustainable. We need an industrial base that produces goods that the world wants, including cars, televisions, refrigerators, and other consumer products. We cannot be an open market while the major economies are closed to our goods and products. To have that much of our resources devoted to war leaves so much less for our civil society. The reason that we do not enjoy universal health care is because of money spent on the military-industrial complex. With tax cuts for the rich, corporations paying little to no taxes, and being given tax subsidies, no wonder America cannot afford free tuition for our children to attend college or vocational school. We will have to invest $10 trillion in infrastructure just to catch up with the rest of the world. We will need high-speed rail, bridges, broadband, water and sewer, modernization of the electric grid, schools and highways. We must make a clear choice between permanent warfare or investing in the growth of our nation. This will only happen when organized labor determines that it has the right to lead the working class and provides a clear vision of our demands for the future of our country. Organized labor cannot afford to see the implementation of a fascist dictatorial government. We therefore must mobilize the working class to go to the polls and exercise their franchise at the ballot box. We must invest our resources in get out the vote programs, voter education and registration. I am not a believer in the Democratic or Republican parties as a solution of what ails working people. However, as a pragmatic man responsible for a small part of the working class, I must make decisions based on the current environment in our electoral system. One must choose one of the thoroughbreds that we currently have in the race. Until we own our own thoroughbred horse, we can only bet on one that is owned by someone else. Trade unionists must mobilize their organizations and form effective coalitions with grassroots activists. They must register, mobilize, and turn out the vote in 2024 to ensure a working class victory. Organized labor must meet with the Democratic Party and make a compact for our support. We must make a 10-point demand for legislation that we want passed in the first 100 days. Legislation like the end to right to work, the reindustrialization of the American economy, building more affordable housing, building more schools to give our children small classroom sizes, universal health care, raise the minimum wage, increase Social Security benefits for retirees, to end the ability to terminate strikers. In exchange, we will double our efforts to build a supermajority in the Senate and a majority in the House of Representatives. Not since the American Civil War, April 12, 1861 to May 26, 1865, has the unity of our nation been challenged like today. Born imperfect in 1776, we have spent the past 248 years striving towards a more perfect union. We are a nation born in blood and tears, the blood of the genocide of our indigenous people, the enslavement of Africans, and the indenturing of our Irish brothers and sisters, Jim Crow, denying women and Africans born in America the right to vote, segregation, and the tears from the exploitation of Chinese and Italian immigrants. Do we take responsibility for our history and take a path to redemption? Or do we slide back into the dark past of our story? There are billionaires who are intent on destroying democracy and fully implementing a fascist government. Elon Musk owns 1,655 satellites of the total of 4,550 circling the globe. More than 1/3 of all satellites are owned by one man, not a government, but one man. The remaining 2/3 are owned by 49 nations or corporations. He has near absolute control over what you hear or see and whether you can hear it or see it. This is not in the best interest of the working class. Supreme Court Justice Louis D. Brandeis points out that we can have democracy in this country or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. We see the great concentration of wealth as we watch democracy slipping from our grasp. Only a concerted effort by organized labor can save us from the avarice of the ruling class. We must mobilize the class and turn out at the ballot boxes to protect us from the 1%. America still holds vast opportunities for our future, but only if that future is shaped by a government in which labor has greater power than capital.